Welcome to Best in Faction.
A podcast about competitive Warhammer 40k.
I'm Colin.
I'm Mitch.
And I'm Chuck.
And I forgot that part of it happened from just a moment there. There was just
He's like, what's he doing?
Just a pause where I thought, oh yeah, right, this is my part.
Well,
we've not done it enough times.
Once you've done a few hundred episodes, or 120 or whatever at this point.
Once you get to episode 200, I feel like the intro really is...
I mean, right? what I was going to say...
I promise to script at least 50% of them even at that point.
There's so much rapport between us, so much timing, that it only took you a half second. We all knew what happened, and it all corrected.
Everybody looked at me like, what if Colin doesn't say anything from here on? What happens then?
Yeah.
Suckers, you're in your own.
Another 5 seconds, and I was just going to yell, I'm Mitch. And
I'm Mitch! Like, whoa, okay.
We'll fix it in post.
I could only hold it in so long, guys. Like, you just left me hanging.
For those that are watching live, I do want to note that my wiener dog is turned over a rug behind me and is literally living his best life. So I'm going to stay here off to the side so you guys could experience that. All part of the video BiffBot experience.
Like a canine ferret.
Yeah, well, he's a little ferrety. I would imagine that ferrets and wiener dogs share a skill with tunnels. Is what I would say.
I'm pretty sure one is supposed to kill the other. Pretty sure.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I'm pretty sure wiener dogs were made to kill subterranean rodents. So
that's true. I wasn't thinking of a ferret as being that, but I'm with you now.
It's not a rodent; it's a weasel. But so welcome to our nature podcast. It's really good to have you guys here.
Yeah.
We're going to be
welcome to Best in Faction, a competitive nature podcast.
All of nature is competitive. We watched two crows fighting in our backyard today, and Lisa had to walk away. I did too, because the crows were just so brutal. And I'm like, well, that's nature. And she's like, it's just so awful. I'm like, well, yeah, there's that third crow over there. That's what they're fighting over.
All right. So I
think our nature podcast is a flop.
Yes, I think that's probably true. I think,
but there is a second wiener dog, so that's good. Like,
yes, that's true.
Reinforcements.
I'll just sit like this the whole time. All right, everybody. All right, so I think that was an appropriately professional intro, like everyone's come to expect from us.
Yeah.
Not like anything big happened recently.
Yeah, right. Nothing that I care about. No, I'm kidding. So LVO was last weekend. Or a weekend and a couple days ago.
Jesus, and man, it feels like so much longer ago already.
And our intrepid field reporter Mitch was there, actually being a judge, which I think is not a thing that you should do at the same time as being a field reporter. So maybe I'll change that.
He gets the inside scoop, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I do get to see the behind the scenes. If you want to know what Val is like under pressure, just listen to any podcast where he's allowed to talk while running the podcast.
I think that's fair. But also on that weekend, Chuck and I had a bunch of friends over here in my house, and we played a bunch of Arks of Omen games. I played 3 or 4 different armies. Chuck played a couple different ones. So we got some great data there. And we're going to talk about those games like they're tournament games. And I mean, we'll be brief about some of them, but we're going to dive in. We're going to talk to you about what the things we tried are and what we saw and what our thoughts are, and see if we can't help you guys get kind of a running start on this new, incredibly different, yet also somewhat similar meta. So before we go any further, I do want to tell people about a thing. That thing is our community Discord. And the reason I want to tell them about this thing is because whether they're a member or would like to become one, there are several things starting right now that they could participate in. One of those things is a Warhammer 40k TTS league with people all around the world, many of which are very good at 40k. And I know that TTS is not as good as playing at the table. That said, it gives you an opportunity to play people from your home without heavy organization. And also you can play people from around the world that you wouldn't get to play otherwise. And you can play really good players who might be able to help you, maybe make some new friends. So we're going to be taking
no disease vector. Pretty important. Like,
that's right. And you don't have to own the models.
Yeah.
You also don't have to own the models.
You can just try things.
Yeah. So that's absolutely a thing. You guys should come join if you want to be part of that. The second thing we're doing right now is we're going to start up a Marvel Crisis Protocol TTS League. For those that play that game, just thought you might want to be aware of it. That TTS mod for Marvel Crisis Protocol is so good that in some ways it is better than the tabletop experience. Because it's the way it displays information is so good. Anywho, so that's going on as well. So if you want to be part of either of those things, come join our Discord. You can do that through patreon.com/bestedtabletop, or you can do it through YouTube, and that also gets you basically the entire library of Best in Tabletop content, rather than just the stuff that we release publicly. Okay, into the show we go. So Mitch was at a small niche tournament in Las Vegas called Las Vegas Open. It's, I don't know, some number of 13, 14 people. No, all joking aside.
968, I think, is
just at the 40K event.
Yeah, just at the 40K event. So I took my sunglasses off because I have a window where the sun was coming through. It's finally moved enough. I don't have to wear them anymore. It was not a fashion statement. So we had the largest 40K tournament ever. We had the largest Age of Sigmar tournament ever. We had the largest Legion tournament ever, where we had several of the people who helped influence the design of the game actually running and competing in the event, which was really cool. Like, it was very cool to see. I happened to know one of them. He taught me to play 7th edition, actually. So it was really cool to see him there. But we had the largest, I think, BattleTech event possibly at this point, or like recently. Just all kinds of stuff. It was ridiculous. There was
person qualify. You had to qualify to get in, and then it was still a 64-person Marvel tournament for MCP.
Oh yeah, the MCP was one of the largest ever.
Yeah, and it was like people that had qualified to be in it. Yeah. Like, it wasn't just dudes. Won by Shield, for those that are wondering.
Yeah, no, it was definitely. I mean, so the last time LVO was at the Rio, obviously COVID. We had the Rio being shut down. Vegas was shut down. Just a really weird experience. This year, Vegas was open. You were able to eat at all the restaurants. Everything was functioning. The Rio, still not my favorite hotel, but at least everything was working. It felt like a con this year. There were like 4 main halls of slightly varying sizes. Obviously, if the main hall was the biggest, then you had the casual hall where we had Heresy, 40K friendly. We had the 40K. So there were RTTs you could play on Friday. If you had come for the friendly, and because the friendly was only Saturday, Sunday, we had the night joust. Like, it was just insanity in there. Then Star Wars, BattleTech, and MCP all had their own hall. And we saw it was something like 2% attrition on the Age of Sigmar event for the largest tournament ever. Now, to be fair, as I learned at the end of LVO, apparently the Age of Sigmar community, like 1/3 of them is just one team. So as they literally rushed the stage. Anyway, we only had 2% 2 or 3% attrition there, and we had 7% attrition for the 40K champs, which is record breaking. That was so unprecedented. We had to shunt people into another hall to play on the friendly tables, because normally there's enough attrition from either event that there are enough tables that we can just set up the correct terrain. But there was just absolutely no attrition. Everyone showed up. At every other LVO I've ever been to, if you just showed up day of, you could get a ticket, you could get an entry, whatever you needed. There was enough cancellations. That was never an issue. People who showed up day of got turned away. That has never happened before. It was insanity. So anyway, going on from there, good things. BCP for the most part didn't take a massive dump and slow everything down. We did have a undefeated player, I think in round 2 or 3, drop after beating the number 1 player in the world. And that we had to repair things because that doesn't normally happen. But overall, this was by far the smoothest running LVO ever. Like, it was so much less stress than every other LVO I've been a part of. Still some minor drama, all the, lots of characters, lots of people. Yeah, everyone's gonna, you get that many people together, things are gonna go wrong in small ways all over the place. The highlight for me was hanging out with Nurgle Matt all weekend. I won't go into a lot of it because part of what makes Nurgle Matt so great is his mystery. But we got to hang out for like every single day for multiple hours and really hit it off. And he's someone I would call a friend now.
Nice.
Really, really enjoyed hanging out with him. So that was my favorite thing. The other probably biggest thing that I enjoyed was seeing Deathcore Peter from our Patreon Discord. He was on the LVO judging staff. He ended up running the Friday RTTs as well as working the floor for the champs and running the Sunday RTTs, and he absolutely killed it. It was a lot for your first LVO, and he did a great job. So that was really awesome to see too. And then obviously seeing everyone was amazing. We showed up on Wednesday night, and then Thursday noticed that Val needed a lot of help setting up the stream. So that's what Peter and I did a lot of for most of the day, was just help them get that all, get the lighting rig and stuff assembled. And it was just
Did many new listeners say hi to you?
There were definitely, so we got to see a few different listeners throughout. I was so busy, like just judging. Turns out you walk about an average of 20 miles a day as an LVO judge. And so I definitely just went to sleep right after a couple days in a row. And then people were like, "Hey, we haven't seen you." And so we set up a meet and greet and everything for people to be able to talk and see people. Saw Paul Slanesh. And obviously we saw Danny, John, everyone from the FLG network, Seth, like everyone from Art of War. It's a who's who at LVO. Like the number of people that I list, no matter how many, I will be leaving off more that I saw. It was, I did get to meet Duncan. That was really cool. I saw him getting turned away by security at the entrance. And I went and grabbed Kicker, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm pretty sure I just saw Duncan get turned away from security. I don't think that's supposed to happen." And I got to see Kicker go off in full run and take care of that. And it was really funny, but, yeah, it's LVO. There's stuff happens there that can't happen anywhere else, and it is its own sort of like heightened environment, like just like any other giant con, like PAX or Comic-Con. Obviously, much bigger events, but like stuff that you just can't have this many. Like the concentration of people who care about this one silly thing is so high that it allows lots of things to happen that just couldn't happen otherwise. And it was just a wonderful time.
Great. That's great. I would say most of what we heard when not being there about LVO was very positive. People were having a good experience. Certainly Lucas beating John Lennon.
That was amazing to watch. Oh my God.
But not only that, but those are two of my really good friends. So all the chats I'm in, I have both have those people in them. And like I was playing 40K and I picked up my phone at one point and I had 113 missed messages.
Yep.
And it had been like an hour. like we were going absolutely crazy. So that was neat. Certainly the finals was really neat. Some excellent games played there.
The Morosoli Naden game was wild.
Yeah.
Just wild.
I think,
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say some unfortunate bookkeeping mistakes that happened throughout there. But something that I think people need to understand is judges don't keep the score. That's not their job. If we're trying, it's way too complex a game with way too many secondaries for judges to be doing that. And also it would be conferring an advantage to people on the stream or on top tables that no one else gets in the event. Because no one else gets to have their game scored. Everyone is responsible for that.
Right.
But wild, seeing them roll off at the end and have it be a tie the first time and have Naden call and say it's going to be a 6 and to get his 6. After that's how he started his game as well, was just wild.
Yeah, and then let's see. What did we hear? Criticism that there was quite a bit of terrain criticism. Just that's just the thing.
100%.
The community was very loud about that. I'm actually going to comment that terrain for 1,000-person event, especially when they don't know that all 1,000 people are going to show up, is a problem that no one has ever had to solve. So I would give Frontline that credit. But I would also comment that I've been to, Chuck, I don't know, 3? Have I been to 4? 4 LVOs. I think I've been to 4. I think this would have been 5, but because there wasn't one in 2020. Anyways.
So I think there are some really...
let me finish my thought.
I thought you were done.
No. So I've been to a bunch of LVOs. I've actually always had bad experiences with terrain. That said, player placed does make that better, but there were still very big problems with the player placed, and in particular, the international crowd was really upset because it wasn't at all what they were used to. So what were you going to say, Mitch?
Oh, I was going to say, I think that there are some definite valid criticisms for terrain in that there was the new sister set that wasn't in the pack. That's really frustrating. I totally get that, from the player's perspective. Pardon me. The survey for players has gone out. I haven't seen all the results yet. I've heard some preliminaries, and we're listening to everything that has come through there. I know that terrain was probably one of the bigger things there. It's one of those things where it's like, yes, we want to make changes to terrain, and I would have liked to have seen the sisters. Like, no table shouldn't be in the packet, period. That's just that's silly. But if FLG spends all of its money and effort right now to adjust for this one LVO, and then 10th drops, and they have to do something entirely different, you can't adjust 1,000 table or 500 tables twice, right? Like not for a company that size. Like I think that the going forward, as long as they're listening to feedback, as long as they're still improving, we need to cycle out some of the terrain sets, or hopefully maybe the terrain rules in 10th will just be better, and and they'll be a little more clear. And so we can be like, oh, buildings can just function here. So now we don't have to have all these weird, specific types of because the thing is the terrain that works is designed to work around the rules that exist, which is fine. That's practical. But when you're talking about anyone who's run events for, more than just 9th edition, there's all these other iterations of terrain that they have to then either cut up and make work, or they just don't work as well as we'd like. So it's a really hard needle to thread. It just is.
I think that makes sense. I would say that I think that Frontline shouldn't ever sell more tickets than they're going to be able to supply terrain for. I'm not
actually. We had the terrain. That was not the problem. We did not have the tables, and it was a fire code issue.
Yes, but okay.
So we had the terrain.
Well, okay. The what people have been saying, I wasn't there, is that the issue with some of the tables people are mad about is that there was not enough terrain to fit all of the tables. I was not there. I'm not a Frontline person, and in general, we try to be very supportive of Frontline. They do an incredible amount of valuable stuff for the community. Anyways, I don't think we should go down the path too much more about terrain. I think anyone who's listened to the show a long time knows that we all both hate and love the terrain rules. We it's better than anything we've had recently, but no, we don't like it. So that's terrain.
It's always the messiest part of the game, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And
player placed is just absolutely terrible, and I've got nothing to suggest to Frontline to solve that problem. I just don't. I can't suggest they make 900 tables of new terrain. I'm too practical about that. Not every 450 tables. Not everybody doesn't have their own table. All right.
Just chat real quick, Donald. That's what I was addressing earlier. Is people did have to play on GW terrain for the first couple of rounds because we had record low attrition in multiple events, which led to no tables being available. So we had to overflow people into the friendly area. That was not intentional nor planned. Again, it's something that had never happened before. It was, something that we had to just adapt to at the time. Going forward, I think that seeing how popular Sigmar and 40K are, I don't think that they should be in the same hall anymore. I'm sure that Sigmar will get its own hall, and that will alleviate a lot of that issue.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because people don't like the Rio. This is the second time in a row that people have just complained about how bad the Rio is.
Yep.
So I don't know how. Okay, we should move on.
That's a really valid criticism of, like, if people aren't enjoying the place, why not move it somewhere else? The answer to that question is it's expensive to find a bigger venue, and making the numbers specifically work. I don't have any sort of idea on what those numbers are, but making those numbers work when all of the public is competing for all of those spaces right now, because everyone wants to have events now that COVID is an endemic, whatever. I'm not trying to get political on it. I just, like, that has created a huge demand for those spaces. So that has changed the market for trying to move it to somewhere else, from my understanding.
I mean, it's already the most expensive tournament that we go to by a lot. And the ticket as well, not just the travel. Anyway, we should move on. Let's move on to the future. Ark of Omens. LVO's over. We've got an ITC champion. All the stuff rolling. Jack is amazing at 40K. We kind of already knew that.
Got to see him play in person. Really cool.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's actually a guy that early on had a hard time not being salty at the table, and he doesn't mind. I've asked him before if I can talk about this, and he said, "Yeah," and I didn't know. Like, he was just, and then his friends gave him feedback, and I haven't had that experience or seen him have that experience at all in a bunch of years now, and I just love that.
I think that having watched him play a few games, like at the highest level of pressure, you would see him you'd see the course correction. You don't see him do it at all, but you see the mechanisms he's put in place to prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
With you saying that, because he has certain things he does at the table that are very clearly intended to keep him focused and just like in the right zone as opposed to the wrong headspace.
Yeah, well, it's something I've been thinking about a lot with the way I come across at the table. Because during the weekend we played, Chuck had to tell me to calm down at one point. And so I was thinking later in that night about this. And so if there's a gauge, like a speedometer or a fuel gauge or whatever you want, and on the far left is you're being so positive about winning that it's awful for your opponent. And the other end is you're being so negative about losing that it's awful for your opponent. What's interesting is there's a range in the middle of that where everyone's having fun. Making jokes about bad die rolls and observing mistakes and stuff like that is playful because it's the way people have been playing games with each other since we were children, right? So what I was realizing is I do a lot of that. And because of my personality to go big, I end up exaggerating and getting myself upset, let alone the way I come across to my opponent. So I was thinking about that range where the difference between saying, "Man, can you believe my dice?" and "Man, can you believe my dice?" and "My fucking dice." Like, there's this range where it gets progressively more awful for your opponent that I think a lot of people can't read at all. And so I thought I'd mention that. I thought that was an interesting thing. Does that resonate with you, Chuck?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think people have different levels of empathy, and depending on how you act and how much of that they pick up, you are transferring your mood to them, and that can definitely ruin a game.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting because it would have never have occurred to think of it in that way. For me, I approach it from, if I can divorce the time I'm having from the game result, then my opponent's going to have a good time, right? Like, if I can just be me and be relaxed and just make sure my opponent is enjoying the best version of me that I can give him at the time and not worry about winning or losing, he'll probably give me the best version of himself back. Cause that's, if he doesn't, then I can adjust and go from there. like it's interesting because it's just a totally different like verbalization of the approach.
I can't not kibitz about the game. That's impossible for me. I have to talk about what's happening in the game. Part of that is that part of that is the type of learner that I am. I can't sit quietly and get the same value out of the game as if we're talking about what's going on. It's just not the same for me. So it's hard for me to realize, it's good for me to realize that a little bit of playfulness about either direction about how the game is going is fine. But once I go too far over with the needle in either direction, it's not okay anymore. And that's a helpful way for me to think about it.
Sure.
Yeah. So, okay, let's talk about Ark of Omens. Everything's new. Points are new. Secondaries are new. Missions are not really new, but they say they're new.
Formations are new.
Formations are new. Things got errated. Things got nerfed. Sorry, Tyranids.
Things got unerrated.
Things got unerrated, Admech. Lots and lots and lots of changes, and everybody's been talking about it like crazy and making predictions. And my personal favorite meme right now is people talking about the win percentages over this weekend. And I'm like, but there's like I know because I do This Week at 40K. There was a 40-person tournament and there was a 60-person tournament. And then there were 2 that were 20 people and under. I'm sorry, that is not enough data for your win percentage metrics. What better would be player win percentage if you're going to go down to that granular level. So, anywho, people are making predictions about what's good. Those of us who weren't able to go to LVO got together and we played, I don't know, but certainly more than 6 games, which means that we have done the science required.
Actually, you've overdone the science. You've overbaked the science.
We've overdone
it. It's going to come out crumbly.
We've done.
No one's going to like it. We're going to need to drink more milk because it's going to be dry. You gave us dry science.
That's right. Thank you for coming to Bested Tabletop for our dry takes on Arks of Omen.
Oh, there go Matthew in the chat. I see you, buddy.
Jack looked in control and never stumped, and that's from a man who's called Gargoyle. So I'm just saying. Okay, so
Stone Gold.
Great. Both great 90s cartoon.
He's so stoic.
Both a great 90s cartoon and a wonderful Star Trek: The Next Generation reunion. Okay, so that's a deep cut for everyone.
No, it really is. It's the best. Like, do you want to see Riker play Lex Luthor?
Yeah.
Watch Gargoyles.
Yeah. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about our experiences from that weekend, and it was really incredibly fun. And I think that we should start with general takeaways. So, Chuck, what's your high-level general takeaways of Ark going forward?
Well, let's talk about, I guess, some assumptions I had about what Ark would be going into the weekend. So, like the meta I predicted and what I brought for that. I thought it would be all the guns all the time would be really dominant. I don't necessarily think I got that wrong.
I don't think you got that wrong.
Yeah. So I think my biggest takeaway is that I brought a Zeech demon list with 7 characters who could all shoot. And I brought a lot of shenanigans for keeping people from being able to shoot back at me. And what I played most of the weekend, because once I played it a few times, I was like, I can't stop playing this. is character blocking and interacting with my opponent and just generally preventing people from shooting back at me while shooting at them, while trying to keep the scores somewhat even until they wore out and taking the game. It didn't win all the games. It lost some of the higher ones, but even those ones, I felt like there's room for improvement. So I think that's my big takeaway, is there's a lot of guns now, and you've got to have a plan for guns, which either means having more guns or more speed and slightly less guns, or having a really strong plan for surviving. And surviving is very hard because of the sheer amount of guns.
Yeah, I think you overperformed your expectations, I would say.
Oh yeah, for sure.
With the list. Yeah. I think those are all fair comments. I'm concerned, in fact. I would even describe it as concerned about the level of lethality that we have. Because we've talked about that before, and that's been a problem for a lot of nights.
So insane.
Admech decided, I went first on train that wasn't perfect. Well, I'm sorry, you're dead. Drukari was wrecking people going first. Like, this is a thing that's been predominant throughout 9th edition. I want to be clear the game has not been who goes first all of 9th edition. That isn't all that matters. The stats don't show us that that's what's going on. But when we say that, what we mean is there's an alpha strike power in the game that doesn't require going first. Sometimes it means you went second, but your opponent had to move closer to you.
And oftentimes going second is where that alpha strike happens, because we require so much terrain to even survive that if you go second, you're entirely hidden, and it forces somebody to come out, and then you can alpha strike, and then you get a trade war, right? Like, it's still how much I can do so much damage so efficiently,
right?
That is really the important part.
Yeah, and I think terrain just becomes more and more important. I think that you have to be able to hide. You can't have straight bullet lanes up and down the field. You just can't.
24 inches of line of sight is probably too far, and that's pretty weird.
Yeah. This is definitely very astute to what we saw.
Yeah.
I think we saw that Marines are really good, which everybody kind of expected. I think that Devastator Doctrine Marines are clearly better than the other factions.
Turns out if you get 15 free secondary points, you're pretty good.
Oh, the secondaries are really crazy now that people get to stay in the same doctrines the whole time.
Yeah.
The Marine secondaries are just like, hey, what if I just got a 45? That'd be cool, right? Like, they're really good. So Marines were very good. I think we knew what Tyranids were going to be like, and then we put some on the table, and they were roughly what we thought they'd be like. We saw some Orks, which we'll talk about. What else did we see other than that? Other than Marines?
Put some Nurgle demons down.
We saw a bunch of guard.
Tyranid behemoths.
Oh yeah, there was definitely some Nurgle demons.
That was interesting.
The Nurgle demon list, I think, also overperformed my expectations.
Yeah, I think what we found was that there are a few things in Nurgle demons that would be great in a mixed demon army, but you can't fill 2,000 points of Nurgle demons because they don't have enough good choices.
Yeah. Chuck, Donald Plummer, who you've beaten multiple times with him playing Tau, I believe that you've talked about that a lot.
Yeah, I have to share it. We played the last round of one tournament, and then came back the next weekend and played first round at the next tournament. Exact same lists, same matchups, everything. It's just like, wow, that's the last game before the game I played. Let's just do it again, I guess.
On different terrain, weirdly.
Yeah, but not that different.
But Donald's a local to our area now, and everybody said nothing but nice things about him. So I don't want the only thing that we know about him to be that Chuck gave him a whooping. So Donald's got a great question for you, Chuck. He says, if 24 inches is too far, which is really far, then why have a gun that's longer range? Shouldn't there be some differentiation?
Yeah, I do think the game should be different. I think that's exactly what I'm saying, Donald. I don't have a good answer for you, because I think it's at the core. We've been talking about it all year, probably longer, is that the amount of lethality in the game has been amped up so high that we have to use terrain to compensate. That doesn't mean that that's the good scenario.
Right.
It's just what we have to do with what we have right now.
Are we saying that maybe we need a larger table? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's not at all.
Ranges make more sense.
Actually, Mitch, I would suggest that we need a smaller table.
No.
Yeah.
No. We actually need our smaller
ranges.
We need smaller ranges.
Sure.
No. I have said before, if they wanted to make the table smaller, you needed to have adjusted everything else in the game.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out my old man hat. It used to be that when you shot at things, you did some damage to them.
Yep.
You didn't annihilate them. And so you had to do some damage to try to whittle a unit down to be like, okay, now I can finish this scenario in close combat and take the point. Now you just annihilate everything your opponent put out in visible space.
And then charge things out of line of sight.
Right, yeah. Like that is so different. And I actually don't think it's a very positive change.
No,
it has a lot of really feel bads. I think it's the only kind of game I don't enjoy. It's just like, okay, so if I expose myself, everything dies. If I don't, then I lose on the scoreboard. What are my choices here?
Yeah, I just can't stand how they have not adjusted anything else. They just adjust. Like, variety and texture matter if all of your ranges are effective, like if 24 inches is long range now, then everything past that doesn't mean anything, and everything under that feels the same. And you've created this weird like delineation. It's just awful. And the sun's back.
I don't understand Mitch's continued hatred for the smaller table. I still like it better. The ranges, to me, 24 inches still feel short range. 36 feels like almost every gun in the game. And then some guns are longer than that. And that's where my brain goes, why? Like, I played against Hank's Dorn. And like the ranges on the Dorn are like 60 inches.
70 and stuff, yeah.
Yeah,
it's
so
funny
it's
is
like,
every once in a while it does matter. There's like a long channel down the middle of the table and they just roll out and be like, I killed that guy all the way over there.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh,
I'm in the corner and you're in the corner, so my range matters for the first time ever. Yeah.
I think that particularly shows in the guard, because the guard were always the people who could shoot from one corner of the table to the other.
Yeah.
And it's sort of over history they've kept it. And now it's just sort of ludicrous. There's so many units that shoot farther than any direction you could possibly do in the game.
Yeah, 48 is really long for range.
I think that's my point, is that there's no texture to the long range weapons because they can hit anything. There's no like that make the game if you're going to make the table smaller, which they've already done, make the ranges of weapons feel smaller so that you have to be bolder in your movements and your placings to get lines of fire. Having everything be able to hit everything, if it's a heavy weapon, you could probably hit what you're looking at, like, and you have movement. Like that's not ideal. I want to be able to be like, oh, these guys are just going to be out of range. So yes, I think everything Mitch said is right. I think that there's an additional element to it that makes it worse. And that's that GW doesn't appear to have any understanding of how fast things should move. This is true.
Like, so my issue with Iron Hands isn't Iron Hands. My issue with Iron Hands is when everybody figures out how good all the speeders are. Mm-hmm. Because those Primera speeders, the Storm Lightning, I can never get this name right.
The Thunderstrike?
Thank you, the Thunderstrike. The Ballistic Skill 2 gunboat that's undercosted and moves 16 inches before shooting.
And is a beautiful, beautiful model.
Is it?
Yeah, I love it.
Okay.
Right.
But let's be clear here. Nothing with the firepower of that needs to go 16. None of it does not need to go 16. That is so far. And we're going to talk about Ravenwing. We're going to talk about Ravenwing quite a bit. And the numbers that we talk about for movement for Ravenwing, if I explain them to you, if I was telling them to you as leak information before the Dark Angels book came out, you would tell me I'm a liar. I'm a dirty, dirty liar.
I mean,
they
I can
do not
do that
make sense at all.
Anyway, if you'd enjoy it.
Yeah, no, it's not really my kink.
Okay.
So yes, I think lethality is still a problem. I did like pared down secondaries in regards to Marines. I liked Marines not having 8 special secondaries to pick from. Mm-hmm. I thought that 4, 3 generic and 1 specific was a much better way to do that. Unfortunately, the specific one for the armies we were running were all basically the same, and they were here, have 15 points, which I don't think is great. The thing I think is my most excited change, and I hope that they're telegraphing the future, is I love the Ark of Omens detachment. I think that list building is so much easier. I still feel very limited. 6, not being able to take 2 detachments means that you also are capped on 6 elites or 6 fast attack or 6 heavy support. And I'm finding that is limiting for me. Mm-hmm. I'm also finding that troops in a lot of armies, you just still need them. Like, yes, you don't have to take them anymore. And yes, in the case of a really high-performing Bloody Rose Sisters of Battle list from last weekend, you could just take all the troops out and add more killing.
Yep.
I don't think that's wrong, but when I look at how 40K is played, I immediately end up putting troops back in. And we'll talk
that's
about that.
That's because infiltrators exist.
It's not just infiltrators.
No, I'm just making the joke of, like, for Marines, the reason I keep looking back at troops is for infiltrators. Everything else, that's the only reason for Marines.
That's because of the I'm sure there's arguments for it, but they're like the best one. The utility on those guys is through the roof.
Yeah, no.
And now they have a Helix Gauntlet for some reason.
Yeah, for free.
Yeah,
it's rad.
Which is rad, yeah. And then their anti-deep strike bubble is the best thing it's ever been. Is the most valuable it's ever been.
Yep, you can just take 10 of those guys, just 2 5-man squads, and pepper them about.
Well, there's a lot of tech there, Mitch, because if you take 1 unit of 10, you can combat squad it into the 5s. The only thing you miss out on is the Sergeant and the Helix Gauntlet. But I think there's a bunch of games where if I get priority for deployment, that I will stretch 10 Primaris Marines across the table 9 inches from your deployment zone. There's all types of games where I will do that. So I didn't realize they could combat squad, if I'm honest. I had never noticed that before.
No. I guess the question is, so this might be like addition lag. I can't remember if the Space Wolf infiltrators get access to combat squad still.
Nope.
Yeah,
Space Wolves do not combat squad because they're not Imperial.
That's my point. So, like for me,
Space Wolves can't combat squad?
Nope. No. They do not follow any of Rupert Gilliman's rules.
Yeah,
do they get to be OBSEC? But do they get to be sticky OBSEC? By the way, sticky OBSEC sounds terrible.
Sticky OBSEC was
they
my
do
DJ
get that
name
in the rules.
Okay.
They just don't do combat squadding, which is weird. But
yeah,
they also usually do like 20-man squads.
I really liked the
there
Marine
is
sticky
a way
objective thing. I thought that was really great. I thought that was a neat change to add to the game for sure.
There is a way for the bike squads, the Swift Claws, to combat squad. It's a funky thing in the way the books translate, but you can basically take it and split it into 2 8-man squads.
Weird.
Yeah.
Or 1 16 bike squad.
Yep.
That's a lot of bikes in one
Yeah,
squad.
there's so many bikes in one squad together.
I know.
That is wildly unplayable. I love that.
This is why Zeech invented flamers.
If you touch something with it, it dies.
Yeah.
Like that many bikes with they get 5 attacks on the charge. Like, yeah, you die. But then they die.
All right, so let's talk through our games. First of all, I arrived early and played 6 games of Marvel Crisis Protocol. So that's how my weekend started. Then Chuck arrived, and I played Space Wolves into Chuck's Zinch list. I was very excited to do this because Mitch and Billy both gave me their Space Wolf lists. I read the Codex. I read the Space Marine Codex again. I have to read the Space Marine Codex a lot because different parts of it are relevant to different armies. It's a very confusing way to do the rules.
Those hundreds of pages just instantly.
No, and I end up confused about which stratagems who has. I have a fallback and charge strat. No, you don't. Are you sure? No, you don't have one. Oh, okay. So I was really excited to play Space Wolves. I took 20 Terminators, which, for those that don't know, have the most hilarious collection of war gear of anybody in the game.
Oh, absolutely.
They can have a combi plasma. You end up with a whole bunch of people with a combi plasma Thunderhammer combination, which I think is hilarious. I'm
angry, but I might explode.
So you get a mixture of storm shields, and you can get cyclone. All this neat stuff in there. You end up with 10 Terminators that shoot really, really good. So I had 20 of those. I had 3 units of 6 Skyclaws. Skyclaws are neat. They get a lot of free war gear. You can give them good pistols and good choppy weapons, and then you can give them a Wolf Guard leader.
Jetpack Marine, for the uninitiated.
It's just an assault dude. It's not a Vanguard vet. I, for a moment, putting them on the table, thought they all had storm shields for just like a moment. I thought they all had storm shields. And then I'm like, oh no, these guys are very fragile.
Yeah.
So I had 3 of those, but they were 6s because I think you absolutely take the Wolf Guard battle leader with them.
Yep.
Then I had 2 units of Long Fangs.
Yes.
I am loudly against Devastator Marines. I think that they are terrible. I think they're even worse when you put them in a drop pod. But that's a conversation for another day, or if you listen to This Week in 40K this morning. Long Fangs I have no problem with. Because you get to have because first of all, give them a las cannons because that points don't matter anymore. So give them a bunch of las cannons, and then you're going to have a Wolf Guard battle leader and Terminator armor with a storm shield and a Cyclone missile launcher.
Yep.
So you're adding to that group 2 crack missiles a turn and a 0-up save and cover on a 3-win model. That is exactly what Devastator Marines need, is the ability to have a bunch of the incoming damage muted so that if your opponent wants to kill your Devastator Marines, your Long Fangs, they have to put committed shooting into them. And that's fine then. If you have to put committed shooting into one of my 140-point units to get it to die, I'm comfortable with that. My issue with 40K is when somebody takes 500 points of their army and kills 1,500 points of my army, which you might think I'm exaggerating, but I've seen it. So Long Fangs, and then obviously characters drizzled throughout. I did have one unit of scouts inside of a storm, which I thought would be the coolest tech ever, because the storm will drive forward and throw these scouts out who have like a melt-a-gun and 3 sniper rifles, and someone's got a power fist and someone else has a thunderhammer. Like, it's bizarre. That actually I didn't think was that great. I think it's clever. I think it's fun.
Amusing, but it's not good.
Yeah, it's too many points. I mean,
They're
both
one
things are not
wound
expensive,
models.
but putting them together
Yeah.
makes that trick too many points.
Yep.
My favorite thing from the Space Wolves Codex was taking 1 by 3 or 3 different ones of Cyberwolves.
Mhm.
Cyberwolves are 15 points, and you can take a unit of 1. That is incredibly good. Those are guys who can stand on an objective. They can run over and screen off part of the table. They can move block tanks from coming between 2 pieces of terrain. Like, take as many as you have fast attack slots. It's just incredible. That was easily my favorite part of the list, because against Chuck, I kept running dogs out to the middle of the table to do things, and it was great.
Well, they got
I need Oath of Moment. Out
Yeah,
this
they got
dog
you.
goes.
6 points of Oath of Moments for 45 points.
Yeah.
All right.
Right. Why did we get Oath of Moment? Because Fido's a good boy. That's why.
Yeah. He's a very good boy.
Yeah. I'm sure I had other things in the list, but that's really the majority of it. And so before we talk about how that went, Chuck, do you want to talk in more detail about your Zinch list?
Yeah, let's get the first thing out the way.
Okay. Chuck's going to talk about this list a lot, so we should talk about this list.
Well, the list is illegal.
True.
As I played it over the weekend. The Chaos Demon book never had any stratagems in it, so it has no caveat to allow an Agent of Chaos to exist in an Ark of Omen detachment and still get Zeech Demon strats. So I was playing with Abaddon and using the Zeech Demon, strats, secondaries. So I was using Abaddon and the secondaries. If you just sort of replace Abaddon with the Bloodthirster with the wound cap, you kind of have the same functional pieces in the army. But it does definitely need to change. I'm actually spinning through all kinds of different ideas on how to fix that, but that's the most one that like just sort of represents the same thing. So I had Abaddon, I had 2 Fate Skimmers with the staff, the 7 strength 7 AP4 2 damage shots coming out of it, and then from there 15 Flamers and 3 Exalted Flamers. And then I was playing 1 Changecaster on foot with the staff as well for the 3 strength 7 AP4 2 damage. So that is a lot. When I shoot all of that, that is 9 strength 7 AP4 damage 2s at 18-inch range, and 9 strength 9 AP4 damage 3s at 18-inch range. So if you're within 18-inch range of me, I'm going to destroy a lot of you, unless there's actually a lot of you. But the good news is I have 15 Flamers in the list. So if you bring a horde up in front of me, I'm going to dump all of that in, and re-rolling, like having to roll a hit, certainly not. It certainly is a nerf, but don't go thinking that they nerfed that unit and made it bad. It's like first round of Tyranid nerfs where you're like, okay,
Yes. My
I'm
book
still
was
going to
a
wreck
13
you.
on a scale of 10, and you've taken it all the way down to a 12. Yeah.
Yeah. All right,
Yeah.
got me. Like they're amazing. I every time I play with them, I have to remind myself that they're 125 points, and it's totally okay that I jumped them out and killed 2 squads and then move blocked my opponent. Like that's a fine action to take.
Yeah.
Because I get such a higher view of them. Like, oh, like these must be treasures. Like, no, they're trash that just ruins everything in your opponent's army while they're doing it.
You did forget a piece of your list.
Oh, what have I? The pinks?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Okay.
A squad of 10 pinks, which is unbelievably good now.
Oh,
and not
yeah.
just because they lost 10 points, but the meta. And then 2 squads of blues, which I also value a ton. Weirdly, 2 squads of blues is the same cost as 10 pinks, and they do different jobs. So let's actually start with them. the way that the meta we saw is a lot of vehicles who shoot. And vehicles shoot pretty hard. And what you do when you have vehicles that shoot hard is you get a bunch of vehicles and you shoot a target over and over and over again to kill it. With the pinks, they get 3-up saves against all of that, which is amazing. But then they start splitting. And the only way to really undo that is to kill them all at once, which the amassed vehicle shooting can't actually do. They shoot like one Lehman Russ or one lane speeder into you. They kill maybe 5 guys if they get super lucky. You get 5 blues back. And the next round of shooting, some more pinks dies, some more blues dies, you get some brims. And before you know it, unless your opponent gets incredibly lucky, they spend their entire shooting phase just blowing away a 140-point OBSEC unit in the center of the table. Oh, I guess I am holding the cat. I declined several times, but she decided it was happening.
Yeah, I was blown away by pinks. How many points is that unit?
140.
Oh my gosh. That unit is so good for 140 points. Holy crap.
In a shooting meta, they're amazing. In close combat, they have a 6-up save, and they melt immediately.
Yeah.
Which is why I bring the blues. You get into a close combat matchup, and you want something to stand between you and your opponent. And the blues do it exactly as well as the pinks do at half the cost. Mm-hmm. So I like having those to try to help mitigate, because I need to slow people down with siege. You need time to do mortal wounds. You need time to do your shooting. And if somebody's rushing with everything, you need help.
Yeah, and it's important to note that when the unit is splitting, it doesn't take reinforcement points anymore. But also, it's important to note that it's reanimation protocol. Yep. So almost exactly. So basically, if you kill the whole unit, nobody comes back. That's really important to understand. And that was a really big deal when Chuck and I played a better game than the Space Wolves game.
Yeah. How many shots is required? Like realistically, how many strength 4 shots are we expecting to need to kill that pink unit? 100?
Well, just to kill the 10 pinks, you would need. You would need 60.
Okay.
Probably. And then you have, that's an average of 10 blues. So there's another 20. And then you need 10 brimstones from there.
Well, if you want to kill it in the first go, you just have to kill 10.
Oh. Yeah, you just have to kill
10 T4 3-up invul dudes that are
you have to be aggressors.
Yes.
To kill it all at once.
Which, by the way, are comically undercosted now.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I kept taking the pinks out because plasma interceptors were going to be a thing, and then they weren't all of a sudden. Hooray! And they're in. So that leaves basically aggressors. And even when aggressors shoot at them, maybe not. And if you leave one pink alive, it explodes into a whole unit you have to deal with again. Second unit of aggressors does get rid of it basically no matter what, but it's not always 100%.
What about 10 Wolfguard Terminators with combi plas and crack?
Well, since both Chuck and I think that unit is trash.
It's so bad. Why?
But let's our example is Colin did shoot that at my pinks.
Yes.
I think he got 4 of them.
That could be. You know that they don't get to rapid fire their plasmas from outside of 12, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's not enough. It's just not enough shots to do anything.
It's only 50 shots. That's just a whole thing I just said.
There's Thunderhammers. There's Thunderhammer Storm Shields in that unit.
Oh, yeah, sure. It's not all.
I had no Thunderhammer Storm Shields at all. I go maximum shooting and then sprinkle in a few Storm Shields.
Even then,
if you don't go maximum shooting, it's not worth it.
Even at 50 shots, if you take a third of it, that's 15 wounds, and that's assuming you hit and wound with everything.
Well, I mean, if I have Logan there, they're re-rolling their hits, so
you're not going to hit with everything. You're not going to wound with everything.
No.
And even then, you might miss. It's got a spike in your favor for you to get rid of them.
Here's the bigger issue: Terminators aren't durable.
Yeah.
Sorry, they're just not.
Particularly against me, I just tear them apart.
Yeah. I played Terminators in 4 different games this last weekend, and I almost lost. I lost 3 of the games. They're not. Even with a Storm Shield and cover, the game is so flippin' lethal. For example, the stupid Dorn that shoots you. The stupid Dorn does 4 damage a shot. So even if you're 3 wounds with the field no plane, it doesn't care. And it's so high of AP, it's putting you on your invul, even if you have that 0-up save. It doesn't care.
But to me, that's what Terminators are doing, is they're putting you in do you have enough AP to deal with this scenario? And I think a squad of them is good. I think you go too far in, you open yourself up to like somebody who does have a lot of AP, and you're like, oh well.
Well, then yeah, it's just a
I have a
list
problem.
check, right?
But if you have one in your list, you're either you can choose how to use it. Either this is invincible against this particular opponent, and it's just hugely
It's
aggressive,
wandering
and mean.
forward towards them.
Yeah,
Exactly.
or it's not, and you send it on a specialty mission. I think that is an amazing add to Space Marine Army. I don't think you're going to see very successful people being like, I have 30 Terminators, here we go. Right? I don't think that'll.
Or even 20, really. The issue that I have with them is everybody's so fast. So we did player place terrain on my terrain on a table that I've probably played on that exact terrain before, and I could not get to Chuck with the Terminators without them getting destroyed. Mm-hmm. They aren't fast enough, and they aren't fast enough. That unit takes up so much space. I had the same problem playing White Scars into Guard. You have these 10 Terminators, and they have to hide entirely because nobody's durable enough anymore. And it's not that I'm afraid of the whole unit dying. I'm afraid of enough of the unit dying that it's not useful anymore.
They don't matter anymore. Yeah.
And it's just, it's D cannons into Terminators again. It just feels really bad. So that game, the Longfangs were great. We were both all in on the Longfangs. They were bad in that matchup. But we both loved what they were doing.
We had basically a center table and a flank that was all about all of our biggest, durablest, most meanest things. Yeah. And that part of the game was sort of like, whatever. But over here on the other flank, there was like all of our trash was fighting. Your scouts and your thing, and your assault marines were over there. Yeah, and then later the Longfangs started putting down suppressing fire. And it was like some blues, one squad of flamers, and an exalted on a chariot. And it was like
they were having their own fight.
Yeah, it was like, what's going on here? But like, it's also really interesting. We're both looking like every little armor save mattered because everything was on a hairpin on that thing. It was very interesting, and I think everything that we had over in that corner was really interesting that way. But I think if it gone anywhere near what was happening on the other side, it would just been immediately annihilated because there was so much power going on.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is I wasn't sure how to use the Terminators. Now, this was one of 2 times on the weekend where I forgot that Abaddon exists because he's so sneaky. You deploy him behind a wall, and then I'm just, I've got really bad ADHD. I can't see him anymore. He gone.
Yeah. This is a secret tech for Colin. Put him behind a wall.
Yeah.
And just be okay.
I lost a tournament game to Mitch because he had scouts in a building I had forgotten about.
Yeah. He will run right at him and just jump him.
Yeah, so I got surprised by Abaddon in both games. But looking back at the Space Wolf game, I don't think there was any way for me to use the Terminators against Chuck that didn't get the Abaddon to charge them.
No.
I had to get within 24 of the things I had to shoot at, or 12 if I wanted to shoot with a lot of plasma. And that's just too close range against Abaddon, who just kills an entire unit of Terminators by himself. Basically,
you would have to put something else in front of them, and then you're just allowing me to shoot at the Terminators and then just easily pick up whatever you put in between. So it's like not a good deal either.
So a lot of the thought process behind the Wolfguard Terminators had been taking 30 of them with maximum shooting and then putting maximum Longfangs behind them, and then having maximum buffing and protecting characters in the middle, and just shoving all of that forward and going, you can't touch this, you'll die. But if you come, but it can also shoot you and actually be useful.
Yeah, and that's kind of what my Iron Hand matches were like. And I'll just say, Zeech is enough. Like, once you're in the 18 to 12 inch range, there's enough with the flamers and all the exalted flamers and all that stuff to burn down stuff like that. Like, sure. I'm not concerned.
No, I'm just explaining the thought process, right?
Yeah, but what's interesting about it is, what I'm trying to do is actually highlight a part of my list of things really interesting, because I can burn down those Terminators in the center while staying character blocked and shipping 3 Screamers or a Chariot over in a space where they become the closest, but they're hidden behind a building. And so then the Longfangs don't retaliate. Because if the Longfangs, like, if you then did something that got rid of that Chariot and the Longfangs retaliated, you'd be just like, and I pick up all of your characters. Like, that would not be even much of a stretch.
Yep.
But it give me it's, the lethality has gone so high that I'm just saying, okay, I'm going 100% jank.
Yeah.
If you can't shoot me, your guns are dumb. And that's all I'm trying to do.
Yep. So the other thing that I played with was 400 or so points of Skyclaws. I wouldn't take that again. I think that they are a clever more than good, or what is it? Neat. They're neat, but they're not. They're so fragile.
Too clever by half.
They're so fragile, and they don't actually hit that hard. Like they don't it's not. They're just not good enough for 130 points, even with all of their free war gear. Maybe they're 115 points. I don't know. But looking at them, I was like, man, I really wish that each of these was another Longfang unit.
Well, you look at something, you're like, well, how about a Thunderstrike instead?
Yeah, right?
Like, the points are crazy that way. Like everything's really weird.
We actually don't have a ton of time to go. We have about a half an hour left, and I want to talk about other games. So I did want to quickly share what got second place for Space Wolves this last weekend at the Crossroads 40K, because it's worth us talking about it, because it's very different than what Billy and Mitch and I were headed down, and it could be a great direction for someone. So this is Simon Quarter's list. He got second place. He has Bjorn, then a captain on bike with the durability upgrades, Primaris Lieutenant, Tech Marine, 2 units of 5 infiltrators. Hey, Marine players, 2x5, 3x5, 10-5-5. Those are the options for infiltrators. 5 or 0 is not an option. Okay, we'll talk about that more. Murderfang, which I was really excited to see, Mitch. Primaris Ancient, Venerable Dreadnought with Hellfrost Cannon, Vendread with Axe and Shield and Stormbolters, 2 units of 5 Wolfen, 2 Wolfen Dreadnoughts, both with Fenrisian Axes and Blizzard Shields, 2 Cyberwolves, and 2 units of Longfangs. Now, these Longfangs have... No, they're all las cannons. Actually, 1 unit's las, 1 unit's plasma. I personally am not a Grav fan, so that's a topic for another day, because we don't have time today.
Sure.
But I thought I would just mention that I didn't realize you can just take another dude with a heavy weapon. So these units are 5 heavy weapons.
Yes.
The leader and the Terminator. Actually, he didn't have a Terminator in one of the units, but
interesting. So it's 7 guys.
Yeah, 7 guys. Yep.
Wow.
7 guys with 5 las cannons and a Cyclone missile launcher.
Yeah, 2 crack missiles.
It's all right. Yeah.
Well, and you can give the other guy like a melt-a-gun or a Thunderhammer and a Storm Shield. Like, you got options. Like power. No, it's a Power Fist and a melt-a-gun, I think, is what you do. Anyway. Yeah,
so I didn't play that game correctly, and I also think that particular Space Wolf list didn't have enough things that do damage. It was it was too many things packed into too few things. And that didn't work for the way I play 40K. It also did not succeed. Chuck held up against me and just obliterated the Terminators with mortal wounds, shooting, and Abaddon.
Flamers.
Once the Terminators were dead, the list is 2 units of Longfangs and 3 units of Skyclaws. That's it. So I was not impressed by Space Wolves in that game, but I think I played them wrong, and I think my list was clearly wrong. If that guy's list is the meta where you get to play with a whole bunch of Dreadnoughts, I'm so in.
The Dreads are really good. So you have the Wolfen Dreads, which are like so cheap now, and they have a 4-up invo. I'm not going to eat up a bunch of time, and then the Venerable Dreads are the same thing, just with ballistic and weapon skill too, and a 2.
It's a lot of really power-packed little pieces.
It's true.
They're pretty amazing.
Anyway, next game.
Yeah. So then we went to sleep. But while we were, but for 7 hours of that day, there was a game being played, and it was Iron Hands versus Nurgle Demons. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
But it was Zach trying a different sort of list, and then the Nurgle Demons just beating him. So, because we don't have a ton of time, why don't you take just a couple minutes to talk about that Nurgle Demons list and why it works at all, Chuck? And then that way we can breeze over it for the rest of the talk.
Yeah, so the Nurgle Demons list is 3 squads of plague drones, 3 5s, which is, I think it's 25 wounds at T6 with a 4-up versus shooting. And then it has 2 squads of what do they call them? Beast of Nurgle.
Oh, yeah.
2 squads of 3 Beast of Nurgles, which are also just a ton of wounds that are difficult to get rid of. And it's pulling a tree, so it can put all that in a -1 aura to start. And then it's got Bellicor. And the idea with this is if you go second, you're not going to be able to hide it. This is too thick a list. You're not going to be able to hide. So you're going to sit back, you're going to pop your Warp Storm table, and everything in your army is going to be -2 to be hit. In particular, this is super important against guard. Taking them to 5s to hit you with all those cannons means that you're going to be okay. and then you're going to pop a bunch of buffs onto your plague drones. We literally only have 21 minutes, and it would take me the whole time to go through all those buffs. But you make them into super powered monsters, and you shoot them out into your opponent, kill whatever's on the center, and take the center for yourself, and you obsec the unit. Repeat until your opponent has to commit so hard, and then the beasts go running out, and they murder. Particularly with Bellacor's reroll, he can pick one unit with his warlord trait to give him full rerolls to hit, and they do mortal wounds on 6s. So you roll a bunch of attacks, reroll everything, get like 8 mortal wounds on the target, plus all the other, the rest of it does damage too. What we found was those pieces I just discussed were of value, and everything else that filled the rest of the army was not. Which really says to me that maybe you go down to just that, or you go down even further and you're like, I'm going to take some flies, and I'm going to take some beasts, and I'm going to bring in some other gods, because you weren't using the Nurgle table for anything. That's just a Warpstorm table, and that's the only thing you lose by splitting. So
yeah. Okay. So then we went to sleep, and we woke up, and our intention was to do a 4-round tournament. We had 6 people. And in the first round, I played someone. Who did you play in the first round?
I don't remember. I think it was Nick's Iron Hands. Round 1.
Yeah.
So Nick brought Iron Hands. He brought some dreads, and he brought a bunch of the not land speeders. So it's a bunch of things that move sort of slow and shoot a bunch. I did what I was supposed to do. I put my pinks out in the middle. I brought my characters up, and I character blocked the characters with something he couldn't see. So all he could shoot was pinks for a turn, while I shot at him for free, and then I shot at him for free again, and then charged into him. And that was it. Like, there was no way for him to get at the pinks without exposing his army. And then once he exposed the army, I take advantage of that. I think it was actually the most textbooked game of the weekend for what my list is supposed to do.
Okay.
So not a ton there. I do think his Iron Hands, we talked about it a lot. There was a lot more just efficiency. Like, the points he's using could have been spent on things that did even more damage. But otherwise, I think it was just great example.
Yeah. That round I played against the Nurgle Demon list that he was just talking about with my Raven Wing. My Raven Wing is basically 9 attack bikes, 10 and 9 Black Knights. So 9 attack bikes, 10 and 9 Black Knights, 2 Talon Masters, Samael, 2 Vengeance Speeders, 2x5 Infiltrators. Okay, that's the list. It is stupid fast. We don't have time to go into all the stupid things about this list, but it is fairly durable. It is unbelievably fast, and it shoots so hard. About being in Devastator Doctrine for the whole game is completely crazy. And if you're wondering, what is this list really like, Colin? Well, there's battle reps going up on our Facebook this week, on our YouTube, this week. And then probably on our Facebook as well this week. And then next weekend, I will be taking it to a GT, and I'll have my normal tournament recap. But the Nurgle Demons did not have what it takes to survive against that shooting. And the big issue he ran into is that my Black Knights were too durable and too punchy for him. He would get into them, and they would basically be too much for him to kill quickly. And because they have 3 attacks each with strength 5 AP 1/2 damage, it was just enough to burn through Nurgle stuff. So that was the core issue with that. Then we moved on to round 2. Oh, and also in that round, Zach played Iron Hands into Hank's Russes, 9 Russes and 10 Mulgrim. The Iron Hands did not survive that shooting. No. Next round. By the way, my opinion is that Guard is the only actual S tier army. All the Marine armies are like S- or whatever you want to say. I know that's not what the meta is showing us yet, but in our testing, I am struggling to figure out how to even have a game with Marines against the stuff that we've been testing for Guard, which will all be unveiled at tournaments.
What are
over
you
the next
talking
2
about?
weeks.
Guard is just languishing.
Yeah, I don't.
Look at the 2
understand.
tournaments this last weekend. What are you talking? I'm joking.
Yeah,
Facetious.
I don't understand it. I don't understand why people aren't flipping out more than they are. I'm hoping to be wrong. We'll find out.
Guard players will find a way to lose.
Yeah, that's true. That's always true, though.
Well,
So then I played against Nick Hendricks's Iron Hands that Chuck was just talking about. What we did is I went first, and he had not screened correctly, and one unit of Black Knights went 30. Went 30. What was it? They went 14, and then they went 17. So they went 31 inches, and then they shot and killed a Redemptor Dreadnought and an Invictor Dreadnought. And then they charged and killed the Tech Marine and the Librarian, which were his only two characters.
Ooh, those are important support characters too.
Yeah, and then they touched a Redemptor, and a couple of them died. That is wildly not okay. So then what we did,
I have another one of those for next turn.
Then we reset. Yeah, and I have a whole other unit of Black Knights that can do this. Then we reset, and I helped Nick move his. We put my army back the way I had set it up, and then I helped Nick placing the army against what I was trying to do. And in that game, I didn't do anything on my first turn. Told him to go. He came out closer, and then I killed him just as fast. Mm-hmm. So that's how that game went. I think Iron Hands are incredibly good, but the Iron Hands list that's incredibly good, I'm going to talk about for my next round. Round 2, Chuck.
So round 2, I played in the Nurgle list. I'll keep it pretty short. I already talked about my short range ability. He stuck to the battle plan. He sent out 1 or 2 units at a time. I was able to take those. By the time we realized that, our clock was too far along in the round, so we couldn't restart. But I do believe 100% that if he just shipped everything as hard as he could, as fast as he could, he would eventually overwhelm me. And that would be an interesting game. But coming out and trying to trade with me did not work for him.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that game wasn't terribly interesting. We learned that one thing, and then the rest of it is irrelevant because that one thing was so far off.
Yeah, okay. So in the third round, I played Zach. And Zach proxied the heck out of his list to basically match what Art of War was telling me is the Iron Hands list. It is 3 gladiator tanks with the big guns, 3 Redemptor dreadnoughts with the plasma incinerator, and 3 of the Primaris Thunderstrike. Lightning Strike?
Thunderstrike. You should have just gone with it.
All right, and 3 of the Primaris Thunderstrikes, and then Zach. What's that?
What is a Primaris Thunderstrike? At this
it's the
point,
speeder. It's the speeder, not speeder.
Oh, the Thunderstrike speeder. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the storm speeder
Thunderstrike.
of the
Sky Strike turret or whatever the.
Oh no.
Okay. Yeah,
not that.
No, this thing is 135 points of
strikes with elemental, like atmospheric conditions. Like it's confusing.
So this is too many guns for 135 points. Is what this is.
Sure.
That moves 16. Zach also took some line speeder tornadoes. Line speeder tornado, maybe the best data sheet in the entire Space Marine Codex now. 70 points gets you a line speeder, T6, 6 wounds, 3 up save, multi-melta, and assault cannon. Goes 16 inches. That thing is absolutely stupid. That is stupid for 70 points. Yep. That is a better, if you're considering taking attack bikes that are not Raven Wing, throw them away. Now, carefully put them on your shelf and put in land speeder tornadoes instead. They are just better than attack bikes.
Throw them away. They're one of the worst models in 40K.
Yeah, I love how much smaller they are than the motorcycles. I've got these bikers on these huge bikes, and then this little tiny attack bike. Whee! We're following the big boys. Okay. I rolled, and we were on Dawn of War, and I rolled to go first. But we did together look at the angles. And I think that if Zach had gone first, I would have lost a Vengeance Speeder and probably a couple Black Knights. But I went first. I did not pregame move. He put infiltrators in the middle of the table, so I couldn't really do it. So I had to settle for my bikes going 23 inches. It was about 3 inches out of their hiding spot and about 20 inches forward. So doing some simple math, they're then about 4 inches off his deployment zone. That was close enough that I was able to kill all 3 of the Primaris speeders. That's a lot from 1 unit of Black Knights. So, and then some longer range shooting killed a Redemptor. So that was crazy. So then we kind of reset and tried it again. But basically what we saw was the Redemptors are great, but they have without an invul, they're awful. So you have to get their invul on them, and then they need to lead your army across the table, because you punching the Ravenwing with the Invictors is actually your best move. Because they just kill. Because first of all, I don't have an invul in combat, and the fists auto kill anything in my army other than the land speeders. Like, it kills the attack bikes in one go. It kills the Black Knights in one go, even with the feel no pain. Like, it punches great and it shoots great. So they needed to kind of lead the charge, but because they have to hide and wait for their invul, that was really rough for the Iron Hands player. I think that Iron Hands and Ravenwing, probably the edge is owned by Ravenwing if you've got player placed terrain that can hide, I'm going to say 1,1700 points of the Ravenwing army. Not everything. I also think the Ravenwing army can just deep strike, tactical reserve some stuff if it doesn't have a big enough footprint. So that was that game. You played at the same time as that. You were playing Hank?
Hank's 9 tanks with the Bulgrin.
The 10 Bulgrin. Yeah, they're so good in that list.
So this is another example of that person's got a lot of guns. I got to play my stuff just right? So Hank is very experienced with this list. He's been playing it quite a bit, or versions of it. And I think I did my best to draw him out, but he was very diligent about how much he would expose and how close he would get to me. He understood that range was more important than line of sight, and so made sure he used lots of opportunities to get shooting from so more than 24 inches away from me to supplement the shooting that we had to get closer in order to get angles. So he did a very good job of that. I think mostly this, as you can imagine, I'm hiding in buildings, scoring slightly more secondaries than him, and he's pushed up, sacrificing things to get the primary going for him and to stop me from getting the primary. So we're trading back and forth. I'm slowly taking a lead, and then Hank is like, okay, I'm waiting, and now it's time. I'm going to try to collapse one of your flanks with just like all of the guns. When he did that, I launched my pinks to center table and tried to retaliate. The pinks got up there, the object the center. I killed what he had on the center. I think it was Ogren. And I killed a bunch of Russes. This is the turn I also dropped the 3 Exalted Chariots. So I had 6 Exalted Flamers worth of shooting. The Exalted Chariots are one of the pieces that are going to come out of the list because they're not as durable as everything else. They become the target as soon as they arrive. So they come in once, they shoot. 360 points for 9 strength, 9 AP4, 3 damage is not correct. I need to have something else in that space. They came in, they shot, they bounced almost entirely off of those Bulgrin. I was trying to take out a 5-man that was going to hide and jump me, and I killed like 1, I think, maybe. Did not go well. But I killed a bunch of Russes, and I charged out and touched a few Russes with a couple of things and held things in place. And his retaliation turn to that, he was able to destroy the pinks with his last bit of shooting. Well, he killed the 3 Exalted Chariots, and then he started just shooting into the pinks because that was the only thing I gave him to shoot, because everything else's characters being locked by character block, right? And he killed them to a man, and I re-rolled the save on the last one and failed. If I hadn't failed, 10 pinks sprout into probably about 10 blues, and then he has to deal with that next turn. And instead, he doesn't have to at all. I think between that moment right there, and then I was also 1 turn late on moving Abaddon up into the center to start actually rumbling with him. If that luck had gone in my direction, or if Abaddon had been played properly, I think I would have won this game. What I had lost by 1 point.
Did he have the banner of bullshit to kill Abaddon? No. Okay.
Well, there's nothing in the list to use it, Mitch.
Yeah, it's all tanks. Yeah, but it's actually interesting. Well, particularly with Abaddon, like obviously
he just needs 1 unit of Karski.
But it's because he's character blocked. If you play properly, you could probably keep him from being killed by that as well. It just means that you can't actually go to your opponent. He has to be he's backfield defense at that point, not aggression, which definitely limits him. But you like at that point, you just never send him into your opponent's zone.
So a more balanced guard list probably would have handled you better and made the game harder for you.
I do think so because they have more pieces.
Yeah,
right?
balanced guard lists are just better than the tank spam.
Yeah, I think
we're all on board with that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was just trying
straight
to
performs even hammers better than the all tank one does. It's disgusting. You just build what you would picture on the box art and play that, and you're going to win your game.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
So then we were supposed to have a fourth round, but it was negative 35 degrees in the garage or whatever. So we let Nick and Hank go home.
Yeah.
Actually, Hank hung out, and Nick went home. But they were supposed to play the guard tank list into Nick's Iron Hands, and I was like, no, this is not.
We have enough data on that they don't need to freeze to death trying to get more.
Yeah. So, but that was when Chuck and I played, and when the Ravenwing took on the Tzeentch list, and we don't have much time left. So let's summarize the last several games. That was a fantastic game of 40K.
Yeah.
I thought I had mismoved a Black Knight unit at the beginning of the game, but it drew Abaddon to the corner of the table, which ended up being huge for me. That Abaddon was far away. Chuck did layers of screening and shot at me with things I couldn't shoot back at. It was really hard. There was a lot of problems with me where I couldn't shoot a character because he wasn't actually the closest target, because there were like dudes over here that I didn't remember.
Like I launched flamers into your army, and then character blocked all my stuff. We both didn't even see it. We were so tired. I think Zach pointed out to us, so like, no, those guys can't shoot anything. I was like, oh, I did an even better job than I thought I did. And it takes you so long to get rid of them that when you're done killing the flamers, the amount of effort you're putting into an exalted flamer who still has a 3-up versus shooting, it just doesn't, like, maybe you get one exalted flamer and it's like, okay.
Yeah, right. That game was incredible. The Ravenwing in the end, I think, were just too much.
Yeah, I didn't understand.
Yeah.
The amount of, like, the thing that, like, very specifically I take away from it is I needed to encircle my characters to block them, because you could literally just drive all the way around my army and shoot me from behind and just shoot my characters.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I hung guys off to the side, and it's like, well, that is just not sufficient. They're getting charged. they're merely 28 inches away from the Ravenwing. That's not going to do it.
Yeah, there was the one where all the Black Knights drove through like a 3-inch gap between the train and the board edge, and they're like, "Hey, look, there's flamers back here. That's awesome." Yeah.
And that's, if you talk about the Abaddon, right? The Abaddon went out to a left flank and killed 10 of them, but he never made it back to the rest of the army.
Yeah, the rest of the army left.
He moved out to an objective, and he stood in the center of it, and he said, "This is mine."
Yeah, and the rest of the Raven army said, "That's great. We're going to be 20 inches that way."
Yeah, the rest of the battle is going to be over that way.
Yeah.
I actually think he was a liability because of his points cost in that game. He did not return enough, because I could have handled those bikes with my other utilities,
sure.
And then he could have just been a 70-point unit.
Right.
So there were lots of times where I didn't like him, in particular because I wasn't using Black Legion strats. Not having an advance in charge once a game is huge, right? It allows for a spike of him getting in. And then he's also just 50 more points. So I'm not upset to be taking him out of the list. I think whatever goes in his place is huge.
Yeah.
But between him and the Exalted Chariots, I have like 700 points of the list that's flexible at this point, and I have 1,300 points that I'm absolutely in love with. So I'm very excited for what's next.
With the GT in a week and a half.
Yep,
So,
that is heavy on my mind.
I have two thoughts. I just don't want to lose to my ADHD real quick.
Okay.
I know we're short on time.
No,
One, the point you guys were making about having one unit of Terminators for Wolfguard. I think that it's actually if a Wolfguard Terminator with a shield is that good, just have 3 units of Long Fangs. They can do the same thing. You don't need Terminators at all.
Yeah, true.
I actually think a Space Wolf army that has one of those guys in every unit is really frustrating.
Yeah, no, the second thing I was going to say is I would absolutely 100% be down for a 40K kart racer. So we were talking about the attack bikes looking like they belong to Mario Kart. I need a 40K kart racer in
Just
my life.
reskin Mario Kart.
I'm done. Yeah. That's it. That's all I got.
Okay. The next morning, we stayed up and we chatted about 40K, which was really fun. And then we woke up the next morning, and Chuck taught Zach how to play Orks into Nurgle Demons.
No, Tyrannid Behemoths.
Oh, that's right, into Tyrannid Behemoths. Do you want to talk about that game a little bit?
Yeah, let's talk real quick. So it's a Death Skulls list. Take out all the power claws and replace it with things that do mortal wounds, and then a lot of infantry spam, MSU kind of style, so you can steal objectives all the time. The Orc secondaries are very strong, and having a bunch of object bodies plus a decent amount of punch to take the primary means that like that list is very much going to score 90 to 100, and it's challenging your opponent to beat it. and so it's really decent. I think there's also some room for just harsher, like Goff style, like 30 knobs, 30 commandos kind of lists. But in that game is very unique experience because he has Tyranid behemoths that are all like 5 model obsec, and characters that are pretty strong, and so it was very difficult to steal objectives. Just long story short, he was still very able to do it. Having to charge one unit in to block up all the characters, and one unit steps onto the objective to steal it from you doesn't stop Orks. They're like, great. And plus the war bosses in those units just wreck Tyranids, so you just had to be very diligent about how he used them.
Okay, yeah, that's great. And who won the game?
Zach won it with the Orks, barely, but he got there. And I also think something, just a recommendation. I half was a part of that game, helping Zach with it, coming over, talking with him every turn. Teaching somebody else how to play something you're interested in is very good for learning and becoming a better player. Teaching others, it cements ideas, it forces you to explain your thinking, all that stuff, and it really did make me feel much more confident in that army. Just showing him how to do it. So highly recommend.
Great. Then the final game of the weekend was my hobby my passion project, which is I would like to play White Scars.
Oh, yeah.
I played White Scars at the beginning of 9th edition, and I wrecked people with Vanguard Vets and Plasma Inceptors and Blade Guard, and it was incredibly fun. Sadly,
so
that's
much
not
so
who
that
they are
I have
anymore.
Immediate negative thoughts when people say Plasma Inceptor.
Yeah.
Well,
at 60 points a pot piece, they're gone forever. So don't worry about them anymore.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, the Plasma Inceptors being gone makes the White Scars really difficult because they do need shooting in the current game, but they can't have shooting that can be seen. So they need really fast moving shooting that can zag in and out of terrain, which is what Plasma Inceptors do. Don't have them. So what I did is I said, okay, well, I can't have them. So instead, I will take 630 points of Tornado Land Speeders. That is 9 Land Speeders, 45 wounds worth. No, that's not right. 54 wounds worth, 9 multi-meltas, and 9 assault cannons. Do those things die? Yes. Are they going to hit really hard? Maybe. The fact that they didn't have rerolls made the whole thing didn't really work. Mm-hmm. But it sounds like it's going to work, and I think some number of tornadoes absolutely work in a close combat list, but that number is not 9. Now, it's important to note that I'm frustrated with my White Scars list only because I was forced to play in what we actually think is the best guard, which I'm not going to go into incredible detail on because I'm not the one doing that work, and it's for a tournament in like a week. So I don't want to... I would rather have Hank on to talk about his guard list than for me to talk about what I think Hank is doing with his guard list. Mine's different than his. So anyways, Hank's guard list is real good. Hank is very good at 40K. He's extremely good at list building. So I had 9 land speeders. I had 18 aggressors. White Scar aggressors get to advance every turn because they can advance and shoot without penalty, and they can advance and charge without penalty.
What?
They do.
No, I mean,
they're real good.
Yeah,
they do incredible close combat damage. They do tons of shooting. I took 18 of them. 10 Thunderhammer Storm Shield Terminators. Again, advance and charge. Also, Corsaro Khan, give those dudes +1 to wound. Give them reroll to hit. Make them real good. So I had them, and then I actually had 3 units of infiltrators in that army. And some other stuff, but the core of the army was 10 Terminators, 18 aggressors, and 9 land speeders. The problem is, I don't think anybody is appreciating how hard the turn 1 and turn 2 Karzakin drop is to stop.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you can't off-specs it. If you think you can, go read the rules. Like, you just can't. The GW completely messed up the rule writing. It's something that a TO could overrule, but raw is 100% clear. You cannot use any off-spec stratagem on the Barbican's key teleporting the Karsakins. Now they can only do 6 mortals, but that's to each target. So on the first turn, I managed to screen the entire table from Hank. so that his Karsakins couldn't come in. Unfortunately, in order to do that, I had to let tanks kill 3 aggressors and a land speeder. I didn't have a choice. On the second turn, my options were screen my army thoroughly and lose a third of my army, or try to go up one flank and try to screen enough. Unfortunately, the Karsakins can do their trick from 24 inches. So it just wasn't real for me to screen. So he came down and he shot the Terminators, a unit of aggressors, and a unit of land speeders. Between the 3 of them, he did 16 mortal wounds and 30 AP2 saves. I can't beat that.
Pretty good 100-point unit.
That's too much damage for 2 CP and 100 points on the first turn. It was on the second turn of the game.
Delete.
Yeah, it wildly not okay. The other thing that is a problem, honestly, everybody should be taking Bulgrin.
Yeah,
the durability with the ability to give them orders.
I have some hilarious lists with Bulgrin.
Yeah, I think that what Guard needs is a bull unit that's wandering to objectives. While the army shoots you 7 million times.
They have they have so many different ways.
We don't have time, Mitch. We don't have time.
I'm so excited about Bulgrin.
Bulgrin are great. So the real problem though is that Mitch's shooting, like I missed a 5-inch charge. Sorry, Hank's shooting. I missed a 5-inch charge with a reroll with some aggressors, and so those 6 aggressors were gone. That's it. It was just, there was nothing there that I could have done. I have to rewrite the White Scars list. I think that the aggressors and Terminators do make sense. The problem is that they need Van Vets with them. They need Van Vets to basically run the 20 inches and do these fast striking missions to weaken what your opponent's trying to do while the rest of your army is approaching but hiding. That's how Scars worked before. Vanguard Vets now cost 7 trillion points, so I can't really justify it. So White Scars is a work in process.
Only unit that has to pay for all their war gear stuff.
Yeah, they're really paying in timeout.
They are so in the penalty box, it's staggering. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good. So what's going to happen now is we're going to have to go. But what we're going to do is that we're going to go to a GT in a week and 3 days. And we're going to play it. Hank's going to come too. And then we're going to have Hank on. And the 3 of us and Mitch will talk through
Which GT is this?
Pecking order in Olympia. They're all called pecking order, aren't they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I've not been paying attention.
There's a lot of tournaments in Washington State now.
Yeah.
So we're going to go to a GT in a week and a half, and then we're going to do an episode where the 3 of us, Hank, Colin, and Chuck, will basically tell Mitch and all you all about that tournament. That should be really fun. I'm taking Raven Wing, I'm pretty sure, unless I decide to take White Scars, which is absolutely possible. I made a White Scars list I'm excited about. Chuck is taking Zinch, it sounds like.
Demons of some sort. I'm not going to lock myself to Zinch.
And Hank is taking a guard list that's just going to make baby Jesus cry.
Yeah. It's not all it's going to do, but that's on the list.
No. Yeah, really the tears of his opponents will feed him.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that's it for Biff Pod for this week. Thank you all for listening for all these years and for supporting the network in general.
Hell yeah.
We appreciate all of you. On the next episode, I'll be announcing the Charity Hammer dates and the early agenda for that.
Oh, man.
So thank you, everyone, and we'll be back soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you later.